What happens when a frontline employee holds all the power? At 30,000 feet, the customer is always right, but at the boarding gate, the agent is king. For Amara Jenkins, flying in a hoodie and jeans, she was just another face in the crowd, another passenger to be processed. But for gate manager Karen Miller, Amara was a target. When a simple question turned into a power trip, one woman's career was on the line, and the other's passport was in pieces. But Karen made one mistake. She didn't just disrespect a passenger, she destroyed the property of her new boss. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was thick with a familiar, anxious perfume. Stale Cinnabon, industrial cleaner, and the faint, metallic tang of jet fuel. It was the smell of journeys, of hurried goodbyes and delayed hellos. And for Amara Jenkins, it was the smell of work. She adjusted the worn strap of her backpack, feeling the weight of her laptop, a device containing the audits and restructuring plans that would define the next 5 years of her life. To anyone who glanced at her, she was just another late-20s traveler trying to catch a red-eye. Faded jeans, a grey NYU hoodie, and a pair of well-worn sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a simple, functional ponytail. She was anonymous. She was exactly what she needed to be. 3 days ago, in a sterile boardroom on the 50th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, Amara Jenkins had been unanimously confirmed by the board of directors as the new chief executive officer of Transatlantic Air. At 32, she was a unicorn, a Wharton prodigy who had successfully turned around 2 other struggling tech and logistics firms. She was also, as the Wall Street Journal was preparing to announce, the youngest CEO in the airline's 60-year history and its first ever woman of color. The press release was timed to drop the moment she landed in London. Transatlantic Air was not just struggling, it was nosediving. It was a legacy carrier choked by union disputes, an aging fleet, and a corporate culture so toxic it had become a running joke on social media. Its tagline was, "We still get you there," a slogan that inspired absolutely zero confidence. Amara's predecessor, a 68-year-old lifer named Bill Hennessy, had believed in a top-down approach. He hadn't flown commercial, let alone coach, in over 2 decades. Amara was the opposite. She believed you couldn't fix an engine you'd never seen. So here she was, booked in coach, seat 24B, on Flight 101 to London Heathrow, the flagship route. She'd spent the last hour just observing. The charging stations at gate B23 were 50% broken, their plastic casings cracked. The digital display flickered, lagging 3 seconds behind every update. The gate agents, 2 of them, looked exhausted, their faces illuminated by the harsh blue light of their monitors. She'd already noted the app failure. She tried to upgrade her seat, not because she wanted to, but to test the system. The app crashed twice before finally offering her a middle seat in premium economy for an insulting $400. She'd tried to use a digital voucher, a "we're sorry" gesture from a previously cancelled test booking. The app didn't recognize the code. "This is ground zero," she mumbled to herself, typing a note into her phone. Friction. Friction everywhere. A loud, obnoxious ringtone blared from the seat next to her. A man in a shiny suit barked into his phone. "Look, just tell legal to bleed them dry. I don't care what it takes. I'm boarding now." He then snapped at a passing flight attendant. "When is pre-boarding? I'm platinum." Amara sighed. This was her customer base, the entitled and the ignored, crammed together in a poorly designed tin can. Her attention shifted to the podium. A third agent had appeared, a woman who moved with the heavy, deliberate authority of someone who had been there for a very long time. Her name tag, glinting under the fluorescent lights, read, "Karen Miller, Station Manager." Karen had that specific, laminated look of a career bureaucratic. Her blonde hair was sprayed into a rigid helmet, and her lipstick was a shade of frosted pink that had been fashionable in 1995. She immediately began rearranging the velvet ropes, snapping at the younger agent, a man named David, for the placement of the boarding pass scanner. "David, I've told you 1,000 times. The scanner goes on the right," she said, her voice a low, grating frequency designed to carry over the terminal din. "We have procedures for a reason. Or is that too complicated for you?" "Sorry, Ms. Miller," David mumbled, his face flushing. Amara watched, her stomach tightening. This was it. This was the rot. It wasn't the broken app or the old planes. It was this casual, public humiliation, this culture of fear. "We will now begin boarding Transatlantic Flight 101 to London Heathrow," Karen announced, her voice magically transforming into a saccharine, pre-recorded melody. "We welcome our first-class and Platinum Elite members to board at this time." The man in the shiny suit pushed to the front. Amara settled in for the wait. Her Group 5, was last. She pulled out a book on aviation logistics and began to read, her mind already drafting the first memo. The company wasn't just losing money, it was losing its soul. The boarding process was a case study in chaos. Groups were called out of order. The first-class line got tangled with passengers needing assistance. Karen Miller stood at the center of it, a furious conductor orchestrating a bad symphony. She barked at passengers who fumbled with their phones and audibly sighed at a family struggling with a stroller. Amara watched her. Karen wasn't just stressed. She seemed to be enjoying the power. She was the troll at the bridge, and the toll was a piece of your dignity. Finally, Group 5 was called. Amara joined the last straggle of passengers. She walked up to the podium, where the young agent, David Chen, was scanning tickets. Karen Miller was looming over his shoulder, supervising. Amara handed David her passport and held out her phone with the digital boarding pass. David scanned it. Beep, beep, beep. A harsh red light flashed on his screen. David flinched. "What is it now, David?" Karen Miller snapped, pushing him aside to look at the monitor. "You're holding up the line." "Sorry, Mum," Amara said politely. "Is there a problem?" Karen didn't look at her. She stared at the screen. "It says, see agent. Your seat's been flagged." Her eyes, cold and assessing, flicked from the screen to Amara's face, then down to her hoodie, and back up. It was a half-second glance that conveyed a lifetime of judgment. "That's odd," Amara said, keeping her voice level. "I checked in online this morning." "Everyone checks in," Karen scoffed. She tapped at the keyboard with 2 fingers, her long acrylic nails clicking loudly. "It's probably a payment issue. Did the card—" "Clear?" The insinuation was obvious. Amara felt a hot flash of anger but pushed it down. "Yes, it cleared. The ticket was purchased 2 weeks ago." Karen took the passport from David's hand. She opened it. The document was crisp. Amara traveled constantly. This passport was only 6 months old, but it was already filled with stamps from Singapore, Frankfurt, and Dubai. Karen stared at the photo. In the photo, Amara was wearing a simple black blouse. Her hair was down. It was a professional, standard-issue passport photo. Karen looked from the photo to the woman in the hoodie. "This doesn't look like you," Karen said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "It's me," Amara said, her patience thinning. "My hair is up today." Karen held the passport up, angling it under the harsh fluorescent light. She ran her thumb over the laminate, feeling the raised edge of the photo. "It looks new. Too new. The laminate's bubbling." "It's not bubbling," Amara said, her voice firming. "It's a standard issue security feature. You should know that." This was a mistake. Amara saw the shift in Karen's eyes. She had challenged the Queen. "I've been working for this airline for 25 years, young lady," Karen hissed, her voice dropping the saccharine pretense. "I think I know what a real passport looks like, and I know what a fake one looks like. This," she flicked the photo page, "looks fake." The line behind Amara was growing. People were sighing, checking their watches. "Ms. Miller," David whispered, leaning in. "That's the new passport design. They all look like that. If you just type in the number." "Are you the station manager, David? Or am I?" Karen snapped. David shrank back. "I will not be told how to do my job by a kid who's been here for 6 months, and I certainly won't be schooled by a passenger who's trying to get onto an international flight with a bogus document." "It is not a bogus document," Amara said, her voice now cold and precise. "It is a legal document issued by the United States government. Scan the chip, or run the number. You will see it's valid. My name is Amara Jenkins." "I don't care what your name is," Karen said. "I'm looking at this photo, and I'm looking at you, and it's not adding up. People like you try this all the time." "People like me," Amara repeated. The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. "People trying to get a free ride. People who think the rules don't apply to them." Karen's face was flushed with self-righteous anger. "You think you can just buy a cheap ticket, flash a fake ID and—" "What?" "Go to London. Not on my watch." Amara was stunned. It was so blatant, so utterly unprofessional, that her CEO brain momentarily shut down, and the 12-year-old girl who was once told she didn't belong at a science fair took over. She felt the blood rush to her face. "Mom." "Karen," Amara said, "I assure you, that is my passport. I am a paying passenger, and you are now 5 minutes away from delaying this flight." "Oh, I'm delaying it," Karen laughed, a short, ugly bark. "No, you are. You're delaying it by bringing this garbage to my gate." This was the moment of decision. Amara had 2 choices. Choice A, she could quietly pull out her phone, dial the number for Marcus Thorne, the chairman of the board, put him on speaker, and have Karen Miller fired before the last passenger had even boarded. It would be simple, efficient, and utterly devastating. Choice B. She could see this through. She could see what happens when a customer has no power, when they are just a name on a list, a face in a hoodie, at the mercy of a broken system and a petty tyrant. She chose B. This was no longer an inconvenience. It was data, the most valuable, painful data she could possibly acquire. "Listen to me very carefully," Amara said, her voice low and dangerous. "You are making a serious mistake, a very serious one. Give me back my passport and let me board my flight." Karen saw the threat, and she doubled down. A true bully, when challenged, doesn't back down. They escalate. They have to prove their power. "You're not getting on this flight," Karen stated. She held the passport in her left hand, "and this document is being confiscated as evidence." "You are an airline agent," Amara said, her voice rising slightly in disbelief. "You have no authority to confiscate a U.S. passport. That is a federal document. You are breaking the law." "I am the senior authority at this gate." Karen's voice was now a screech. "I am responsible for the safety and security of this flight. And you are a security risk." This was the point of no return. Karen Miller, who had peaked 15 years ago as a station manager, who felt unseen and unappreciated, who saw younger, smarter people like David Chen getting opportunities she never had, and who saw this girl, in a cheap hoodie, challenging her. She snapped. She was holding the passport open to the photo page. With her right hand, she grabbed the top corner of the stiff, laminated page, and she ripped it. It wasn't a clean tear. It was a vicious, tearing sound. She ripped the laminate, pulling it down, tearing the paper underneath, right across Amara's face. The photo was destroyed. The sound was louder than a gunshot in the suddenly silent terminal. David Chen gasped, his hands flying to his mouth. "Ms. Miller! No!" The businessman in the shiny suit, who was already on the jet bridge, stopped and looked back. The family with the stroller stared, wide-eyed. Amara looked at her passport, her identity, her key to the world, mutilated. Karen stared at it too. For a fleeting second, a flicker of, "Oh God, what did I do?" crossed her face, but it was immediately replaced by a mask of hardened self-preservation. She had to justify it. "It's damaged," Karen said, her voice trembling but defiant. She threw the passport onto the counter. "It was already damaged. The laminate was peeling. It's an invalid document. I can't accept it. You are denied boarding." Amara Jenkins said nothing. She slowly picked up her ruined passport. She looked at her own face, torn in two. "You did this," Amara whispered, the full weight of the act landing on her. She wasn't a CIO. She wasn't a passenger. She was just a black woman who had been violated, publicly, by someone in a uniform. "David!" Karen shouted, ignoring Amara. "Call Port Authority. Tell them we have a disruptive passenger at B-23 who needs to be removed from the secure area. She's traveling on fraudulent documents." "No," David said. "Ms. Miller, I'm not doing that. I saw what you did." "You'll do what I tell you, or you're fired," Karen shrieked. She grabbed the phone herself. "Security. This is Station Manager Miller at B-23. I have a 1017. A woman, yes, refusing to leave the gate, trying to travel on a fake, yes, dark hair, wearing a grey hoodie. Send someone now. We have to get this plane out." Amara looked at Karen. She looked at David, who looked like he was about to be physically sick. She looked at the other passengers, who were now pretending not to see, shuffling quickly onto the plane, eager to get away from the scene. She would not be escorted out by police. Not like this. With a calmness that was utterly terrifying, Amara picked up her backpack. She tucked the destroyed passport into her pocket. "You have no idea," Amara Jenkins said, her voice a flat, dead whisper. "What you have just done." She turned, and without looking back, walked away from the gate. Her flight, leaving without her. Amara walked until she was out of sight of gate B-23. Her legs felt like lead. She found an empty bank of seats by a closed, duty-free shop and sat down, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her shaky and cold. The humiliation was a physical thing. It was a burning in her throat, a pressure behind her eyes. She watched as the jet bridge for Flight 101 retracted. She heard the faint, powerful whine of the engines spinning up. The plane, her asset, began its slow, lumbering pushback from the gate. It was leaving, and she was stranded. She took out the passport. She traced the jagged tear. Karen Miller hadn't just ripped a document. She had ripped the very fabric of the company Amara was hired to save. She had proven, in one violent, prejudiced act, that transatlantic air was fundamentally, perhaps fatally, broken. For a full minute, Amara let the anger wash over her. It was pure, white-hot, and clarifying. There was no sadness. There was no, "Why me?" There was only a cold, hard, executive-level rage. She took a deep breath. She pulled out her phone. She didn't call the police. She didn't call airport security. She bypassed all of them. She dialed her number 1 speed dial. It rang once. "Amara, you should be in the air. Did the Wi-Fi connect already?" The voice was deep, cultured, and belonged to Marcus Thorne, the 72-year-old chairman of the board of Transatlantic Air. "Hello, Marcus," Amara said. Her voice was steady. "I'm not on the flight. I'm still at JFK." The silence on the other end was heavy. "What happened? Mechanical? A delay?" "No, Marcus. I was denied boarding." "You were... What? Did you miss the flight?" "No, I was denied boarding by the station manager at gate B23. A woman named Karen Miller." "Denied boarding? For what? On what grounds? Did she not recognize you?" "She did not know who I was, which was the point," Amara said. She stood up and began to walk toward the terminal exit. "She accused me of traveling on a fraudulent passport. She told me, and I'm quoting directly, that people like you try to get free rides. And then, Marcus, she destroyed my passport." Another, longer silence. This one was glacial. What? "She physically tore the photo page of my US passport. She ripped it in half." Amara could hear Marcus breathing. It was a sharp, angry inhalation. "Amara, I am... Words fail me. I will call the head of airport operations. I will call the Port Authority. I will have this woman arrested. I will have her employment terminated this instant." "No." The command was so sharp, so absolute, that it stopped the chairman of the board cold. "Amara? What do you mean?" "No. You will do nothing, Marcus. You will not call the airport. You will not call the Port Authority. And you will absolutely not fire her. Not tonight." "I don't understand," Marcus said, his voice laced with confusion and fury. "She assaulted you. She destroyed government property. She stranded our new CEO." "She stranded a customer, Marcus," Amara corrected him. "And in doing so, she gave me exactly what I needed. This isn't one bad apple. This is the culture. This is the disease. This woman felt untouchable. She felt empowered to humiliate and destroy the property of a customer in full view of 20 other passengers and 2 other employees, because she knew she could." Amara was at the customs hall now, a place she was supposed to be in London. She went to the airline service desk. The line was 30 people deep. She ignored it and went to the TWA hotel right across from the terminal. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. "I'm checking into the hotel. I'm going to get some sleep, and then I'm going to fix this. But you don't fix a rot like this by firing one person over the phone. You fix it with a scalpel, publicly." "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked. He knew that tone. It was the turnaround voice that had made her a legend. "I need you to book the large conference room at our JFK corporate offices. 9 a.m. Tomorrow. Get an email out tonight. Mandatory. All hands meeting for all JFK operations management. That includes VPs, HR, station managers, scheduling supervisors, everyone. Tell them the chairman of the board is flying in for an emergency audit. I want her, Karen Miller. I want her in that room." "She'll be there," Marcus said, his voice grim. "Good. And Marcus, send a car for me at 8:30 and book me a new flight for tomorrow afternoon, from first class this time." "Done. Amara, I am profoundly sorry." "Don't be sorry, Marcus," Amara said, as she walked into the stunning, retro-modern lobby of the hotel. "Be ready. The surgery begins tomorrow." Amara checked into her room at the TWA hotel. The irony was not lost on her. She was staying in a monument to a golden age of aviation, a time when air travel was synonymous with glamour and respect, all while her own airline was crumbling from a lack of basic human decency just across the way. She did not sleep. She showered, washing off the grime and humiliation of the terminal. She ordered room service, a club sandwich and a pot of black coffee, and opened her laptop. The CEO was clocking in. For the next 6 hours she worked. The anger from the gate had cooled and hardened into a diamond-sharp strategic focus. First, she pulled the entire HR file for Karen Miller. It was exactly what she expected. 25 years of service. She had started as a flight attendant in the 90s, moved to ground staff, and had been station manager at JFK for the last 12 years. Her performance reviews were a sea of mediocrity, meets expectations. But Amara dug deeper. She went into the raw customer feedback logs, the ones HR managers were supposed to summarize. The pattern was undeniable. Complaint, March 2023. Agent K. Miller was dismissive and rude to my elderly father. Complaint, July 2023. Station manager at JFK mocked my accent. I am from Spain. Complaint, December 2023. Refused to allow my family to pre-board, was yelling, made my son cry. Complaint, February 2024. Manager, Miller, seemed to be targeting redacted passengers of color, was letting white passengers on with overweight bags, but charged me $100. Over and over, dozens of them. Each one was resolved with the same cut-and-paste reply. We have reviewed the incident with our staff and reinforced our policies. We apologize for any inconvenience. Karen Miller had never been formally disciplined. Not once. She was protected. Her direct supervisor, the VP of JFK Operations, Robert Paxton, had signed off on every single resolution. He, Amara noted, was on the mandatory invite list for the 9 a.m. meeting. You don't just have a bad apple, Robert, Amara whispered to the screen. You have a poisoned orchard. Next, she pulled the file for David Chen. 6 months with the company. A recent business graduate from Stony Brook. No complaints. In fact, he had 2 commendations in his file from passengers, both praising his calmness and kindness. Amara stared at his file. He was the counteragent. He was the one who knew the policy. He was the one who tried to stop her. And he was the one who was summarily crushed by the toxic seniority. He was the exact kind of employee Transatlantic needed, and the exact kind of employee Karen Miller was driving away. Amara began to type. She wasn't just drafting a termination notice. She was drafting a new corporate policy, a new training module, a new reporting structure. She created a new confidential whistleblower channel, reporting directly to the CEO's office, bypassing local HR. She titled it the David Chen Initiative. At 4:00 a.m., she emailed her new policy drafts to the company's general counsel with the subject line, effective immediately, review and implement by EOD. At 5:00 a.m., she called the U.S. Passport Agency's 24-hour emergency line for lost or stolen passports. She explained in calm, precise terms that her passport had been willfully destroyed by an airline employee. The agent on the other end was, for the first time in Amara's experience, utterly speechless. They scheduled her an emergency appointment at the New York office for that afternoon. At 7 a.m., she laid out her clothes. The hoodie and jeans went into the trash. Out of her suitcase came a razor-sharp, custom-tailored suit in deep navy blue, a crisp white silk blouse, and a pair of black 3-inch Louboutin heels. She was no longer the anonymous passenger. She was the executioner. At 8:30 a.m., her car arrived. As she crossed the lobby, she finally looked at her phone's news alerts. For immediate release, Transatlantic Air names Amara Jenkins as new CEO. The press release had dropped. The secret was out. Good, she said to her reflection in the tinted window. They'll all know who I am. The main conference room at the Transatlantic Corporate Building, a drab 1980s-era box squatting near the long-term parking lot, was buzzing with nervous energy. It was 8:55 a.m. The room was packed with over 50 managers, VPs and supervisors. They all clutched complimentary styrofoam cups of terrible coffee, whispering to each other. Why is Thorne here? Is it fuel prices? Did we lose the Heathrow slots? I heard their filing for Chapter 11. Karen Miller was there, near the back. She was holding court with 2 other senior gate agents, complaining loudly. You believe this? 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I had to swap my shift. We're already understaffed. And now this emergency meeting. It's ridiculous. Robert Paxton should have pushed back. You don't call an all-hands just because the old man on the board gets a wild hair. What was the situation last night, Karen? One of her friends asked. I heard you had to call security on someone. Karen took a sip of her coffee and smirked. Oh, just some girl in a hoodie trying to fly on a fake passport. She got loud, so I handled it. Handled it. Let's just say she's not flying to London any time soon, Karen said, with a smug laugh. Tore her passport right up. You have to be firm. These people think they can walk all over you. You show them who's boss. That's the only language they understand. Her friend looked impressed. Damn, Karen, you're hardcore. In that same room, sitting in the front row, was David Chen. He hadn't slept. He'd come to the meeting convinced he was going to be fired. Karen had filed a report against him for insubordination. He was pale, terrified, and clutching his hands in his lap. At 9:02 a.m., the doors at the front of the room opened. First, Marcus Thorne, the chairman, walked in. He looked like thunder. He walked straight to the podium, put his glasses on, and stared at the assembled crowd until they fell silent. Good morning, he said, his voice a low rumble that commanded attention. We are at a crossroads. This company is failing, not because of our planes or our routes or our prices. It is failing because of our culture. It is failing because we have forgotten who we serve. He paused, letting the words sink in. The board has taken decisive action. We have a new leader, a leader who understands that a company is built from the ground up, not the top down. A leader who has a proven track record of fixing what is broken. Karen Miller rolled her eyes, whispering to her friend, Oh, great. Another suit from Yale who's never seen a baggage carousel. It is my distinct honor, Marcus said, to introduce to you your new Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Amara Jenkins. Marcus stepped to the side. The doors opened again. Amara Jenkins walked in. The click, click, click of her heels on the linoleum floor was the only sound in the room. She was not the girl in the hoodie. This was a woman of absolute, undeniable power. She radiated an incandescent, cold fury. She walked to the podium, shook Marcus's hand, and turned to face her new employees. Her eyes scanned the room, finding faces. She saw Robert Paxton, the VP, who looked confused. She saw David Chen, who looked like he had just seen a ghost. And then her eyes landed on Karen Miller. Karen's smug smile froze. Her face went slack. The styrofoam cup dropped from her hand, splashing coffee all over the industrial carpet. The blood drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. No, Karen whispered. It can't. No. Amara's eyes locked onto hers, and she held her gaze for 5 long, brutal seconds. Good morning, Amara Jenkins said, her voice crisp and clear, amplified by the microphone. I am Amara Jenkins, and I am your new CEO. My tenure began 72 hours ago. My first act was to be a customer. I booked a coach ticket on Flight 101 to London Heathrow last night. I wanted to see what our passengers really experience. She let that hang in the air. And what I experienced, she continued, was a masterclass in failure. I experienced a broken app, a chaotic boarding process, and a culture of abuse, personified by one of our own managers. She finally broke her gaze from Karen and looked at the crowd. Last night, at Gate B23, a paying passenger was accused of fraud. She was publicly humiliated. She was told she was not our kind of customer. And when she protested, the station manager took her United States passport. Amara reached into her suit jacket pocket. She pulled out the destroyed passport. And she did this. She placed the ripped document on the overhead projector. The image flashed onto the large screen at the front of the room. Her own face, torn in two. A collective, horrified gasp sucked the air out of the room. "This," Amara said, "is transatlantic air. This is the service we provide. This is the authority we give our managers. The authority to destroy a person's identity, to strand them, to violate federal law." She turned her eyes back to Karen Miller. "Ms. Karen Miller, would you please come to the front?" It was not a meeting. It was a tribunal. Karen Miller, standing in the back, felt her blood turn to ice water. The styrofoam cup, now a soggy, useless thing, was crushed in her hand, coffee dripping onto her uniform skirt. She was staring at a ghost in a $5,000 navy blue suit, a ghost who was now her boss. "No," she whispered, a sound so faint only her equally horrified friend could hear it. That's not... It's impossible." Amara Jenkins's eyes, cold and precise, scanned the room. She looked over the VPs in the front row, the HR managers clutching their notepads, and the dozens of supervisors, all frozen in a state of collective shock. She saw David Chen, his face as white as a boarding pass, looking like he was about to faint. And then her gaze moved to the back of the room. It locked onto Karen Miller. There was no flicker of recognition, no aha moment. Just a cold, steady, predatory focus. Amara knew exactly where she was. "Ms. Karen Miller," Amara said. Her voice, amplified by the microphone, was not loud, but it was so charged with authority that it hit the back wall like a shockwave. "Would you please come to the front?" The room performed a silent, terrified ballet. Every head turned. 50 managers, VPs and supervisors, all of them, turned to stare at the station manager in the back, who was now visibly trembling. The friend who had been laughing with her seconds before took a sharp, instinctive step away, as if Karen were suddenly radioactive. "Now, Ms. Miller," Amara commanded, her voice slicing through the silence. "Don't make me wait." Karen's body lurched forward. It was an involuntary, puppet-like movement. She began the walk. It was the longest walk of her life. The room was only 60 feet long, but it felt like a mile. The click, click, click of Amara's heels on the podium platform had been a sound of power. The sound of Karen's sensible, rubber-soled work shoes was a desperate, shuffling scuff, 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 on the industrial carpet. She could feel every eye on her. She could feel them thinking. What did she do? In her panicked mind, 1,000 excuses formed and evaporated. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. She looked different. It was dark. She was wearing a hoodie. This is entrapment. Yes, that's it. She set me up. She reached the front. She stood below the podium, like a prisoner in the dock. She looked up at the woman she had, only 12 hours prior, dismissed as garbage. It's, Karen stammered, her voice a reedy, pathetic whisper. "There's been a mistake. Amara held up one hand. The gesture was so sharp, so absolute, that it physically cut Karen's words off. "Ms. Miller," Amara began, her voice a terrifying conversational calm. "You have been with this company for 25 years, 3 months, and 12 days. Is that correct?" Karen, stunned by the precision, could only nod. Yes. "In that time, you have received, by my count, 14 separate training modules on security protocols, customer interaction, and the handling of federal travel documents. Is that also correct?" I believe so. Yes. Good. Amara reached into the pocket of her suit jacket. She did not pull out a phone or a file. She pulled out the mutilated passport. She held it up, pinched between her thumb and forefinger, as if it were a piece of contaminated evidence. Then she walked from behind the podium to the overhead projector, the same one that had been showing the welcome slide, and placed the passport on the glass. The image flashed onto the giant screen behind her, her own face torn in two. The laminate peeled back, the blue and red security fibers severed. A collective, horrified gasp sucked the air from the room. It was one thing to hear about it. It was another to see it. "This," Amara said, her voice dropping, "is my property. This is a United States passport. And last night, you did this to it. I want you to look at it, Karen. Look at what you did." Karen's eyes darted between Amara and the screen. It was damaged. I told you. The laminate. It was peeling. It looked fake. I was following protocol." "Protocol." Amara repeated the word as if it were foreign. "You are the senior station manager. You are telling me, in front of the entire JFK leadership, that your protocol for a suspected fake document is to, what? Seize it? Call Customs and Border Protection? No. You told me it was garbage. And then you ripped it. Show me that page in the employee manual, Karen." You can't, because it doesn't exist. You didn't follow protocol. You invented a protocol. You appointed yourself judge, jury, and executioner at gate B23, all because a passenger in a hoodie challenged your authority. Karen's mind was racing. She had to shift the blame. It was her only chance. I was under stress. We were understaffed. And David Chen, he was on the scanner. He should have flagged it properly. He's new. He didn't call for a supervisor." In the front row, David Chen flinched as if he'd been struck. Amara's head snapped toward him, then back to Karen. Her eyes narrowed. "You're going to blame him? You are going to stand here after what you did and throw Mr. Chen under the bus?" Amara's voice suddenly became a laser. "I was there, Ms. Miller. I remember every second. Mr. Chen did his job. He scanned the passport. You pushed him aside. He tried to tell you it was the new passport design. He tried to tell you to run the number. And you screamed at him. You told him he was an incompetent kid and threatened his job in front of a line of 30 passengers. That's what happened, isn't it?" Karen was cornered. The lie had failed. Her entire body was shaking, her face a mask of sweat and terror. So let's move past the incompetence," Amara continued, walking closer, "and let's move past the lies. Let's get to the real issue. Why did you do it, Karen?" Amara's voice was now dangerously soft. "You looked at me. You looked at my passport. And you said, 'People like you try this all the time. Please, Karen, for the benefit of me, for Mr. Thorne, for your entire management team, enlighten us. What kind of people am I?'" This was the question, the one that hung in the air, thick and toxic. Karen just stared, her mouth opening and closing in a silent screen scream. She had no answer. She couldn't say black people. She couldn't say young people. She couldn't say women in hoodies. Because she knew, in that moment, she had meant all of them. She broke. The dam of her self-righteousness, her 25-year tenure, her petty kingdom. It all burst. She began to sob. Not quiet tears, but ugly, heaving, gasping sobs. No, please," she wailed, clasping her hands together. "Please, Miss Jenkins, I didn't know it was you." She looked at Marcus Thorne, her eyes pleading. "Mr. Thorne, I didn't know. I swear to God. If I had known, if I had any idea at all, that she was I would have rolled out the red carpet. I would have done anything. It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. Please, I'm a good employee. 25 years. Ask anyone." Amara let the words hang in the air. She let the pathetic, desperate confession echo off the walls. She looked at the room. She looked at Marcus. She looked back at the groveling woman in front of her. And that? Amara's voice was no longer soft. It was a low, controlled vibration that seemed to shake the very foundations of the room. "That is the entire problem." She slammed her hand flat on the podium. "Wump, you are not sorry. You are not sorry you abused a customer. You are not sorry you destroyed federal property. You are not sorry that you publicly humiliated a woman based on the color of her skin and the clothes she was wearing. You are sorry that you did it to your new CAO. You are sorry you got caught. You had no idea who I was. And you treated me like, what was your word? Garbage. And the truth is, Karen, you've been doing this for years. This company has just let you." Amara turned, her fury shifting targets. "This rot, it goes deep." Her eyes found the VP of JFK Operations. "Mr. Robert Paxton." Paxton, a man in a rumpled suit who had been trying to blend into the wall, flinched. "Mr. Paxton, you are Ms. Miller's direct supervisor. Your desk is where complaints go to die. I spent my night reading your handiwork." Amara picked up a thick folder from the podium. She opened it. March 12th, 2023. A complaint from a Dr. Aris Thorne, no relation to the chairman. He wrote that Station Manager Miller was dismissive and cruel to his 80-year-old father, who was in a wheelchair. Your response? "We have reviewed the incident and reinforced our policies." You signed off. July 30th, 2023. A complaint from a family who wrote that Miss Miller mocked my wife's accent and deliberately separated our family on the plane. Your response? "We apologize for any inconvenience." You signed off. December 22nd, 2023. Christmas. A complaint that Ms. Miller made a child with autism cry by screaming at his mother over a carry-on bag. Your response? A $50 voucher. You signed off. She slammed the folder shut. You, sir, are not a manager. You are an enabler. You are the gardener of this poison. You protected her. You cultivated this culture. So here is what will happen. Your entire department is being put into receivership, effective today. Your executive compensation is frozen, and your performance, Mr. Paxton, is now under my direct, personal review. If I find one more resolved complaint from any of your staff, you will not be on probation. You will be in the unemployment line. Am I perfectly clear? Paxton looked like he'd been punched. He just nodded, his face pale and clammy. Yes, Ms. Jenkins. Amara turned back to Karen. The finality was in her eyes. The karma had arrived. Karen Miller, for 25 years this company has mistaken your seniority for leadership. You are not a leader. You are a bully. You are a disgrace to the uniform. And you are a walking, talking, multi-million-dollar liability. Effective as of 9:17 a.m., your employment with Transatlantic Air is terminated. For cause. The sobs turned into a shriek. No, you can't. You can't do this. I have 25 years. My pension. My 401k. I'll sue. I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole company. You can't just... You set me up. Amara almost laughed. It was a cold, sharp, mirthless sound. Sue me. For what? For termination, for cause, for gross misconduct, for the willful destruction of a federal document, a crime which, I had my legal team confirm this morning, carries a penalty of up to 10 years in a federal prison. Are you going to sue me with the high-definition, multi-angle security footage from Gate B23? Or with the testimony of Mr. Chen, who you just tried to defame? Or perhaps with the stack of complaints that Mr. Paxton so helpfully filed away for me? You will not see $1, Ms. Miller. You will be lucky, profoundly lucky, to avoid prosecution. Karen's face collapsed. The fight was gone. She looked finally like what she was, a defeated bully. She turned, one last time, to the chairman. Mr. Thorne, please. Marcus, you've known me for 20 years. Tell her, it's not fair. Marcus Thorne, who had been watching this all unfold with a stony-faced fury, looked down at her. Ms. Miller, in 40 years on this board, I have never been more ashamed of an employee or of my own failure to see what was happening. Do not speak my name. That was the final blow. Amara nodded to the door, where the 2 security officers she'd requested had been waiting. Security. Ms. Miller's access is revoked. Escort her from the building. She is not to touch a computer. She is not to speak to any other employees. Her personal effects will be mailed to her. Get her out. Please, Karen whispered, as the guards took her by the arms. Please, I have a family. I made a mistake. Please. So did every passenger you ever belittled, Amara said, her back to her. Take her away. Karen Miller was dragged from the room, her wails echoing down the hall until a final click of the door cut them off. The room was dead silent. The karma was so swift, so total, that no one dared to even breathe. They all just stared at this new CEO, who had, in 10 minutes, decapitated a 25-year veteran and neutered a vice president. Amara took a deep, cleansing breath. She straightened her jacket. She walked back to the podium. Then she smiled. It was the first time she had smiled, and the effect was jarring. Mr. David Chen, please come up here. David looked up, his eyes wide with pure terror. He thought he was next, for insubordination, for being a witness. He slowly stood, his legs shaking, and walked to the front. He stood where Karen had stood. Amara looked at him, and her voice changed. It was no longer cold. It was warm. It was the voice of a leader. Mr. Chen, she said, last night I watched you. I watched you do your job politely and professionally. And then I watched you try to do Ms. Miller's job too. She turned to the room. I watched Mr. Chen try to de-escalate. I watched him try to follow actual procedure. I watched him, a 6-month junior employee, try to stop his 25-year veteran manager from breaking the law. And for his trouble, he was threatened and humiliated. This company is broken, she said to the crowd. It's broken because it's been driving out people like David Chen and promoting people like Karen Miller. That stops. Today. She turned back to David, who was just starting to understand. Mr. Chen, as of this morning, you are promoted. The new role is Manager of Customer Experience and Service Training, JFK. Your first task will be to work with my office and HR to build a new, mandatory training module for every single employee in this company. We're going to call it the Gate B23 Protocol. It will be about de-escalation, unconscious bias, and the simple, radical idea that we will treat every single passenger, whether they're in a $10,000 first-class seat or a $400 coach seat, whether they're in a suit or a hoodie, with the dignity and respect of a CEO. Can you do that for me, David? David Chen was speechless. Tears were welling in his eyes, but for a very different reason. He tried to speak, choked, and finally just nodded, a tear rolling down his cheek. Yes, ma'am, Miss Jenkins, thank you. I can do that. Good. Amara shook his hand firmly. Welcome to the new transatlantic air. Go sit down. We have a lot of work to do." As David walked back to his seat, a new man, Amara, faced her terrified, silent team. "This," she said, her voice ringing with purpose, "is day one. For 2 decades, this company has promoted the Karen Millers. It has rewarded tenure over talent. It has built silos of petty tyrants. Those days are over. I am here to build an airline. We will find the David Chens. We will elevate them, we will train them, and we will promote them. You will either be part of this recovery, or you will be part of the past. Your choice. This meeting is over. Get back to work." That is the story of how one power-tripping manager learned the hardest lesson in corporate life. You never, ever know who you're talking to. Karen Miller's 25-year career ended in 25 seconds, not just because she was a bully, but because the person she chose to bully was the one person who could finally hold her accountable. Amara Jenkins didn't just fire a bad employee, she signaled a change in the entire company culture, promoting the very person who showed a little bit of kindness. This is a true life lesson in karma. Sometimes the person you step on is the one holding the ladder. What do you think? Was this karma justified, or was the firing too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of karma and consequence.